Hi, Jeff Rhodes here again with another video on creating business applications with Microsoft 365 inspired by my book. And we've got kind of a lot to cover today, so I'm going to jump right to it. So this comes from a question I have from one of the subscribers to this channel. And what they really wanted to do, they wanted to have an Excel file that with a scheduled Power Automate flow would update a SharePoint list, but then every time that it ran, it needed to, if the item was already there in the list, update it, and then if it wasn't in the list, needed to insert it, and they got that working okay. But then the hard part was if there was anything that was in the list but not in the Excel file, since that's the master copy of the data, we needed to delete the item in the SharePoint list. So I thought that'd be a fun video. So that's what we're going to do today. So you can see I've got a spreadsheet here, and the way I did it, I won't take the time here, but I just said new Excel workbook, and then I used Copilot it has a few samples, and one of them was an employee tracking one. So here's the Excel spreadsheet, and I kind of messed with it. I added Paul McCartney in there because I'm a big Beatles fan, as you might know, and I am going to see Paul McCartney in the Got Back tour coming up couple months now, so I'm looking forward to that. And then what I added inside the table, because it's important from Excel when we're using Power Automate, it's got to be in a table, and Copilot made it for us. I added this SharePoint ID column. So the idea will be that when we add that, we'll add it to SharePoint, we'll write the ID in there, and then we'll use that for the logic to delete stuff later. So let's jump right into it, because time you get all the nuances in, it is a few things. So I'm going to do this as a manual flow, an instant one, just because I don't need to really run it scheduled and don't want it run on my machine. But you would do this like every night or every week or whatever. So I'm just going to say video, synchronize, Excel to, I'll say synchronize Excel, SharePoint. How about that? And if you're not new to this channel, you know that I'll do a bunch of variables next. So some of these I knew up front, and some of them I had to as I'm dealing with it. So let's just jump into it. I have made variable a favorite, which is kind of nice. I don't have to keep searching for it. So that'll save us a little bit of time. So the first thing we're going to need is, I'm going to call it var SharePoint IDs addressed. And what I do with that is that's going to be an array. So we're going to need that array to keep track of everything we've messed with. In other words, every SharePoint ID we've either added or updated, and then what's left we're going to need to delete. So we're going to loop through the SharePoint list and then check this array to see. So we've got to make sure we add this array as well. And then another one we're going to use is, it's useful to us to have a variable, I'm going to call it var SharePoint ID, that is the item, the ID that we're working with. And we know that's an integer, but it turns out it's better to make it a string, and then we just need to do all the logic back and forth to make it into an integer, because sometimes what happens is Power Automate won't give us the data that we want when it's set up as a number. It's looking for strict numbers there, and we need to sometimes convert it and everything. So it'll do that. And then I'm going to need a Boolean variable on, do I want to delete? And I'm going to call this a little different than my example. Var should delete list item, just so it's a little clearer. So here we go. And again, I don't need to initialize it with a value yet, because we'll do that in there. And then I'm going to need 3 variables for telling us what's going on. And I do recommend these so that we can get a notification of what's happening, because this is pretty dramatic stuff, deleting items and so forth. So we're going to have one for each. So we're going to have var added list as a string. And what we're going to do is we're going to initialize it to start with. So I'm going to say added items. And you can do the tags either way. I'm just going to forget the slash there. Make it there. So we'll do that, and then we're going to need 2 more of those. So it's going to be var updated items. And I'll say update, oh, I change it to string. Updated items. And we put the HTML in there so that it's got a nice break. We're going to send it with the Teams chat, but same if we want to do it in an Outlook email, because otherwise it'll all end up on one line, be hard to read. Here we go. Let's move up a little bit, and we're going to need deleted items. There we go. And you're seeing me doing already. I like to go up here and take the few seconds to name it just so we can, kind of makes it a lot easier to read. Okay, so that gets us to our variables that we need. Now we need to go to Excel and we need to read our spreadsheet there. So we're going to list rows presence in a table, and the site I have it's on my sample site. I pick the document library. We're going to do this a bunch. And it's in a synchronization folder, and there's that file. And we know we're the right track if it finds our table called employee attendance. Now, really important here, because this messed me up the first time. You know, I've covered this, I know, in a video, but I forgot all about it, is the date time format. Since I made my SharePoint list, and I didn't really show you that. See if we can find it. So I've got these to match, but I made the dates. You see that symbol? It's a date column. And when it comes from Excel, it actually does dates as a decimal number. Even though it looks right, it really isn't. So we got to tell Power Automate that this is the format, and we're going to put that as an ISO 8601 business. And that actually is consistent with how it already formatted it. But that's really important, because otherwise this is going to fail. The other thing I'll just show them that doesn't work, since I allowed Copilot to name the column, it put a space in it, so I can't order by any column that, like I want to do employee name or employee ID, so that will fail. And I'm not doing any kind of OData query or anything, so that's the only one that I need. And then what I need to do next is go ahead and loop through the rows. See, I've named that already in my sample. So I'll come over here and pick the body like that. And so what I'm going to do now is, it can be difficult inside these subloops and stuff to get our hands on the ID that I want. And so I'm just going to put it into the variable. We're going to use this variable a lot. And so we're going to set our SharePoint ID. And very clearly now this is blank now. But when we come back around and run it later, then since I'm going to write to it, it won't be blank forever. So here's where we have to be careful, though. This is a string. Now, so it's okay now because we're going to read it from Excel, and it doesn't really care there on Excel what is. So we can come in and get it. We'll just call SharePoint ID. So far we don't have problems, but we'll get back to that in a minute. So what we're going to do next is we need to do a condition, and we want to check if SharePoint ID column has value. So we're going to look at that SharePoint ID, and if it's not equal to blank means that it has something in there. And so in that case, what we want to do is we want to update it. So we could do the logic either way. We could do, but just how I chose to do it. So we're going to update item. Notice I have favorites there, but it only does 2 of them. I've put a favorite on SharePoint, but I can't get that one to show up high on the list, but that's all right. So again, we're going to go here, but now I'm picking the SharePoint list that I built. So it's got, unfortunately, I put a bunch on this site, so it's down towards the end, but it's called the Synchronization. And so now I'm looking up the item. So how do I look it up? Well, by that ID there. But what I need to do is, since my string, my variable is a string, I got an ID is a number. I need to make sure it knows it's a number. So I got to say int for integer, and then I pick my variable, and it will error if we don't. So that's how we want to do it. And then I want to show all of these and set the values. So what I'm going to do is go to each one and set them. So notice that these are the columns of the Excel and these are the SharePoint columns. And I'm going to go ahead and pause so you don't have to watch me do all of those. So I'll be right back. All right, so I'm back. You see I put those in there. And again, it's the date if when we got to that, or on the other side when we go to add it, if we didn't have that ISO format, then it would fail right there. So that got it updated. And then what we want to do is we want it to go ahead and append to our variable. So we got append to string variable, and we're going to do the var updated items. Oh, and I actually wanted to call that, sorry. Let me go back to this. These, I actually wanted these to be updated list. I'm kind of getting confused. Whoops. Kind of zoomed in on that a little bit. This be updated list. And I called it updated items inside there, so it should be deleted list, just so it's parallel list. There we go. Then I'm going to, let me save real quick. And I'm going to leave it, and whoops, it's in the middle, doing something. Let me get it to where it was good. And then I get this where it's zoomed in, so I got to leave it and come back again. But let's come in there and fix this first. So this is var updated list. And what I want to put in there is employee name, so we can see who got deleted. And what I want to put in there is from my Excel file. Like that. And then I want to put that break tag on it so it comes in another line. All right, there we go. So we should be able to save it now. And I'll pause and come right back in so I can zoom this out again. All right, I'm back now. I'm zoomed back again. So let's go over to the false side over here. There we go. And since it's the other side, I need to create items. So let me just type that in. So that should find the SharePoint one. And we can go that same list. And then we need to add all the columns. So this is exactly like the other side. So I'll do one and then I'll pause it. So we're on employee ID. So back in a second. All right, so we're back. See, I added all of those there. And now we got an extra step is what we need to do is go back to Excel and we want to write that column. So we're going to update the row and I'll be a little more descriptive. I'll say write SharePoint ID to Excel. So this goes back to the Excel file. So we go to samples, go to documents, synchronization, and our file, pick our table. And we are going to need to click a column. And so I'll go ahead and use the employee ID so that we can know which column to update. So we have to give it a value. And again, we only really need it as long as it didn't change between now and the last one, you know. So you could actually change the ID in a future one and it would update because we're not relying on it other than this. So we'll get the, and we could, since we just wrote it to employee name, we could get it there, but I'll go get it out of the Excel of which one we're on. So I'll say employee ID like that. And then what do we need to write? It's the SharePoint ID. And what we need, very important, we got to get it out of this create item. So that's like the primary key. So we don't know that until we create the new SharePoint list item. But by the time we get to this one, it knows what that item is. So we write that to Excel. So that's good. So come over here. Again, we're going to update our variable. So this one, what we're going to do is we're going to set that SharePoint ID. Remember, we already set it up above over here, but it could be blank. But we know on this side it's not blank. But on this side, we're going to go ahead and set it to that value we just had. But again, we're going to run into problems with strings versus numbers if we're not careful. So I need to say string, and then I got to convert that ID from the create item there, like that. And it'll tell us if we don't have a problem. So I'm going to say set var SharePoint ID 2. So we can't have two of them with the same name. So that's the second time we set that. And then I'm going to do add to the list. So remember before we had the updated list. Now we're going to do the var added list. So I'll say employee name. And let's see. Really should go back to this one. Like that. There we go. And put the break on there. And we'll say append to var added list. All right, so we're actually almost done with the adding and updating part. But what we've got to do now is we need, I mean, we actually are done with that, but we need to go ahead and start building our array of the things that we've handled. That's why we updated the var SharePoint ID in both cases. So we're going to append to the array variable. And we only have one array variable, so that's easy. And what we're going to put in there is the var SharePoint ID. Notice that's a string, so we just need to keep that in mind when we take that out again. So var append SharePoint IDs addressed. All right, so let's save so far, see if we have any problems. All right, so far so good, but we're not going to test it now because it's easier just to test this all the way through. So what we want to do now is we have to figure out how to delete something that's been missing. So again, we put everything in this array. So if we have nothing that's gotten deleted, then when we need to check it though. So what we want to do is we want to read the whole SharePoint list. And it's going to give us a warning, because this list could be thousands or tens of thousands long. So if you have that, then you probably want to do a different solution, or maybe just pick something, that ones that are within the last 30 days or something like that. But I'm going to search get items. And again, you're doing this on a schedule, so even if it's slow, you don't really care that much. So I'm just going to say read SharePoint list. Like that. Samples. Synchronization. And we don't need any parameters there. So we could put the O data if we wanted to. So now we're going to loop. I'll just say loop through list like that. And what we want to do is grab the body value from there. And this is the part that's been a little bit tricky. So we'll see if we can get it right here. Because we've got to do some logic of checking the array. So the easiest one seems to be working the best is I'm going to go ahead and set that SharePoint ID again. So this will be the third time. So set var, this one says 2, but I'm going to change it to 3 like that. And here's where we need to go ahead and convert it to a string again, since this is a string. So we click this guy and we're going to say string, and then we go to dynamic options here. And a little bit confusing because it's looped through the list, so it gives it like that, and then you have to put the ID on it at the end. So this is, you can play with it and get the syntax. So it's ID like that. And I think my parentheses are right. Let's see. Yeah, so we'll try that. But if it doesn't work, then we'll have something to debug, and we can come in and see what the value of that variable is. And then we have another one. This is our Boolean that we wanted to set. So again, we're going to set the variable. This is var should delete list item. So let's put that up there. And we need another expression, because what we want is we want to figure out if this SharePoint list or the SharePoint ID is inside the array. If it's inside the array, then we don't want to delete it. If it's not inside the array, it means that it's extra, it's an orphan, we do want to delete it. So I'm going to put this expression. So first we're going to build it from the ground up. So we're going to say contains, and it kind of goes off the screen, but you can kind of see the required is the collection in this, and then we'll see the second one is the value. So we want to go to our collection, which is that var SharePoint ID is addressed, and the value that we want to check for is this var SharePoint. Whoops, I went by it. Var SharePoint ID. Now notice this is going to return true if the SharePoint ID is in there. So since we want var should delete item to be true, in the case that it's not there, we just need to put a not on it to get our logic right. So this will be not, and then the expression needs to be a Boolean, so we'll change it. So I had some trouble. I was doing my thing that if it happens here, we'll address, but this is where we have to really test it, because if we get this wrong, then it's going to delete the things that we just put in there, and it won't work. So we'll try it out. So we'll say control condition, and we'll just say check if should delete list item. And we want to check that variable. If it's equal to true, then we want to go ahead and delete it. If it's false, we don't do anything. So we're going to come up here and say delete item. Again, we'll have to pick this, seems like the 100th time, but it's not that many. Pick the list. And notice we have to give it that ID. So, got to come back and we don't really have to go to our SharePoint list ID because we have the read SharePoint list that we can get it from right there where we just did it. So see that we're reading that list. So that should take care of it, but we could convert the SharePoint list ID variable back to a number if we wanted to as well. And then we're almost done, but we got to go ahead and append to our var deleted list. And we'll say again employee name, and we'll put oh, actually, we should probably get it from the SharePoint list. Yeah, not from the one we put in. Got to be careful there because we're doing it from the SharePoint list item that we just deleted. So it should be like that, and we'll put the break on there as well. All right, we'll say append to our deleted list. Oh, and notice this happens sometimes, so you got to keep an eye out for there. So for whatever reason, it put that in a for each loop, which I don't want. So I'm going to move that in there. Probably just thought there was multiple values possible. So I can click on that and hit delete. That'll confuse things. There we go. And so what we want to do, that's done with all that. And then at the very end, now I want to go ahead and go to Teams. And I want to send myself a chat. So I'm going to post a message. And it's going to be as Flowbot. And I'm going to do a chat with Flowbot. I'm going to send it to myself. And I could do like a Teams channel or something like that, or a group chat. In this case, I just want to put the things in there. So I'm going to put the added, just put a couple blank lines. I'm going to say the updated, and then I'm going to say the deleted. And save. All right, so far so good. And it's giving me this, that's what I was going to talk about, suggesting we use an OData filter so that we don't have performance problems with a big list. So we'll take that chance for now, and we'll see. So again, what we're expecting to happen is for all 10 of these to get added. And we're expecting the SharePoint ID to be written in there. So let's approve it. And I'm hoping it's going to work. So we'll go to the SharePoint list, see if we see anything. That's a good sign. We're getting some IDs written there. Again, we're not out of the woods yet because this means it's adding these in here. Let's refresh, see if we can see them. Yeah, and I can do that so far. Now, if I have problems with the delete, then it'll delete it right away. Now, I don't see anything. Let's add that. Let me open this in a new window. Yeah, so here's the Teams chat. So that's a good sign. Whoops, that was an old one that I was messing with. So it had added these people and then it updated none of them and it deleted none of them. So that's a good sign. And we can see it here in the list. So that's good. So let's go to our source. So one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of Helen Clark here. And I'm going to, let's just put this in Alice Johnson in the rock and roll department. Already got Paul McCartney there. So let's see if we can, it should update that and it should delete Helen. And then maybe I'll add one more in there too. So let's insert a row and we'll call it E012. It's not in the right order, but that's okay. And let's add our friend John Lynn in there. We'll put him in the music department too. We'll put him in, we just pick the 20th and we'll put him absent. Oops. Go to this next one. And I won't put anything. So let's try that. So I would expect John to get added, Helen to get deleted, and Alice Johnson to be updated. So let's give it a shot. So let's test it again. Oops. Oh, yeah, so probably easiest is just come on out and run it again. We don't really need, if it works, then we don't have to debug it and see it. If it doesn't work, then we'll do it. So let's go look at this again. So that was a good sign. You saw if you quickly, John Lennon got added as row 72. Haven't seen the update there. Oh, there we go. So let's go look at our team's workflow. Oh, yeah, so this didn't work right. So we got backwards on our thing. So it updated everybody, but then it deleted everybody. So let's go look at our list. Yeah, it deleted everybody. So we had a bit of a problem there. So that can happen. This ID can be a little bit funky, but let's see if we can debug it there. It looks like it's still running for whatever reason. All right, so loop through. So our problem's going to be, whoops, in here. So let's see what the var SharePoint ID is. So that's 62. And then that was false, so that's good. Let's see if, oh, so it didn't delete that one, but let's look at the rest. Oh, what's probably happened is this for each got added in there again, but that was not exactly what we wanted. But let's, or you could scroll to there, but we're going to make this a little smaller so we can see it a little better. So none of these went through and said that we should delete them. Oh, it's probably when we got to, one of them should have put it through. So, all right, let me pause for a minute so the video doesn't go too long. Let me look at this and I'll come back. All right, well, I'm back. All I've done is deleted that for each loop that was on there, and I ran it again. So because I had to delete these items, so because those had been deleted, but I ran it, and let's refresh this. So these are all there. Noticing, so it has the John Lennon, you know, it has basically everything we changed it to, the rock and roll and so forth. But then I ran it twice. So I ran it the second time. There's my workflows, and what I expected, it was there. So I didn't have anything added, updated everything, and didn't have anything deleted. So let's try now doing a test and see if that works. But that so far. So again, let's go ahead and just get rid of, let's do Bob Smith this time. Won't make any difference if it's working, but we'll delete that, and we'll change Alice Johnson to folk, and we'll add, let's do E013, and we'll add Ringo. We'll call it drumming department, and pick a date, put him present, and we'll put test note here, like that. All right, so let's go in and try it again. Go back out of here, and we'll run it. And we did get Ringo get added. That one's so far so good, but we'll see if the deletion, there's my thing there. There we go. So that's more what we're looking for. So the Bob Smith got deleted. Ringo Starr was added, and we updated everything else. And we've got that there. Let's go look at the thing. There's, Bob Smith's there, but let's reload it. We should, now Bob Smith is gone. Ringo got added to the end. You can see I've added the IDs just so we can do it. So, all right, well, a little bit of a snag there, but like I said, some fairly tricky logic, but hopefully that was helpful, and hope the subscriber who asked for this gives you enough to make it work in your environment. So don't forget to subscribe if you haven't had a chance. If you need consulting or training, reach out. Be happy to help. Talk to you soon. Thank you.